How old are the kids?
6, 8, and 17.
That's a lot of hockey expenses.
Yeah.
We produce in British Columbia about 380 million meals worth of salmon a year. That's something most people aren't aware of.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
Right?
So what's your name and what do you do?
I'm Brian Kingzett. I'm the Executive Director of the BC Salmon Farmers Association and proud Director of the BC Agriculture Council.
And what about yourself?
I'm Jeff Jeglum. I'm the Sustainability Supervisor with Grieg Seafood BC.
What's salmon farming all about? Can you tell me a little bit more?
Salmon farming is about producing sustainable salmon for export in domestic markets here in British Columbia. We produce almost $1 billion of economic activity and over 5,000 employees in rural and coastal communities.
And you're one of those employees. Can you tell me a little bit about your role and what you do?
My current role is mostly focused on carbon accounting and carbon reduction and waste reduction initiatives, but I've got a lot of experience through hatchery and freshwater as well as saltwater production and regulatory compliance.
So the kinds of things that Jeff is working on, why would a company in salmon farming choose to hire someone to do them?
We're very proud to be one of the lowest carbon proteins in the world. We have high efficiency in our feed. Our animals are swimming, they're not fighting gravity, and so we can produce very sustainable production and protein to feed Canadians and Americans.
Starting with you, Jeff, tell me a little bit about the innovations you're most proud of.
We're using a lot of RAS technologies, recirculating aquaculture systems for our freshwater production, as well as, exploring hybrid feed barges to reduce our carbon footprint, and exploring site electrification as well to completely get on grid.
And would you put that into context for us? Why is that important?
One, we work in very remote areas, so power is important, but we also are really committed to being a very sustainable product. And so anything we can do, we are users of the marine environment. We're part of the coastal communities. We work with First Nation communities who host us in their territories under agreement. And we are committed to making sure that we're sustainable, full stop.
We've heard that here in Canada, and particularly in BC, there are some challenges that salmon farming is dealing with as far as license to operate and permits and things like that. Would you walk us through what those are, what impact that's having?
Yeah, we're having a discussion with the federal government right now on a transition. That transition has asked us to move to an uncertain technology in the next now 4.5 years. And unfortunately, that may cause the industry to leave British Columbia because we're being asked to move to technology that right now we do not have enough power for, we do not have enough land for, and frankly, we're not sure that the investment certainty is doing that. So it's driving investment out of Canada at that time. So we're working very hard with our Indigenous partners to bring science to the table to make sure that we can meet the concerns, and those concerns that we might have negative effects on wild salmon. So right now, all the federal government and peer-reviewed science says that we have minimal risk to wild salmon. We are bringing in a lot more innovation. We're prepared to bring in a phenomenal amount of innovation to make sure that we further reduce any potential risk, even though we're convinced that we don't have significant risk now.
What are types of innovations you're using and why are they important?
A big one, I think, right now is that we're trialing a barrier technology to kind of exclude environmental factors, sea lice interactions, as well as increasing the welfare of the fish just by maintaining a consistent oxygen level in the water.
And are there any technologies that you're really excited about, Brian?
Yeah, I am. Well, I think what is really incredible is the amount of science and data that we're bringing to it. We now have technologies in the salmon farming sector that actually use artificial intelligence and underwater cameras to actually use spots on a salmon to barcode every salmon. And so every time that salmon swims by the camera, it measures whether it's growing, whether it's healthy, whether it has any parasites that might require the veterinarians or the fish health professionals that are on every company to take a look at it. We are now doing, all salmon farms are now like massive oceanographic sensors where we're measuring dissolved oxygen, current. We're looking at biological factors such as phytoplankton and learning to sort of mitigate and respond to that, whether it's by decreasing feeding or adding barrier technologies like Jeff mentioned. And that whole factor is just really driving us into that sort of agriculture 4.0. And so I think we're all as a sector very proud to be sort of bringing this very high technology as part of the ways that we make ourselves incredibly innovative, more efficient, and more sustainable, frankly.
Salmon's a really popular protein source. What's something that your average consumer might be surprised by in terms of how you farm it, how you get it to them, how it lands on their plate?
Well, I think a lot of it is just the control. We are able to grow salmon year-round, produce salmon year-round, so that makes sure that when it meets markets anywhere in North America, it's absolutely fresh, it's consistent of the highest quality, and that's what retailers really need, and that's how we produce that high-quality stuff that ends up on consumers' plates. We produce in British Columbia about 380 million meals worth of salmon a year. That's something most people aren't aware of. And as we go to 8 billion and 10 billion people on the planet, we need almost a whole nother world's oceans to supply the seafood demand that a global population approaching 10 billion people is going to do. So we see ourselves as part of the solution for taking pressure off wild stocks.
So what makes Canadian farmed salmon different from the other products?
I'll tell you what makes it different is that it's low carbon, it's local. Right now, Canada has a shortage of farmed salmon for our markets. And we are so proud of the fact that we are trying to produce low carbon food, but at the same time, we're bringing into Canada over $20 million worth of salmon a month from the very northern Norway and from the southern tip of Chile by air freight at a very high carbon cost when we could be producing it here at home.
Jeff, how did you get into this work, and what kind of advice do you have to a young person who's just starting their career journey?
I mean, I did 15 years in construction and kind of came across aquaculture by chance. Took a short course in aquaculture and really fell in love with it. As far as advice, I mean, just check it out.
And about yourself, Brian, what has your journey been?
Interestingly, I grew up in terrestrial agriculture. I grew up on a large tree fruit farm, but then I went down to the coast and got a couple of marine biology degrees, and then I realized that I could actually combine my sort of traditional family, as a farmer with my marine biology, and that's farming the ocean. And I've worked in shellfish and oysters and kelp and now salmon, and it's such a great opportunity for, people that want to actually apply high-tech skills, but get out in the marine environment and have all sorts of phenomenal experiences. We have jobs that pay well over the median salary. They're enough that people are able to move to rural areas, especially people that really like hanging out in the outdoors and kayaking or fishing, and be able to make enough money to afford a home, to start a family, and have a career. And that's one of the things that we really see is there's lots of opportunity for advancement in this sector because it is blending that terrestrial agriculture with fishing skills and high tech as you're prepared to be.
Can you tell me a little bit about value and significance of employment opportunities in salmon farming for Indigenous communities that are around your operations?
So all of our farms in British Columbia operate under agreements with the First Nations that host them. And one of the reasons for that we operate in those territories is because of the oceanography, but also because we need lots of jobs. And we provide local jobs to First Nations in their traditional territories using skills that they've grown up using. And then they're able to take those skills of, on the water and local knowledge. So we provide, I think, over 300 First Nation jobs in the farming companies alone. We put over $50 million a year into First Nation communities, and that has been transformational for some communities. For example, the Kitasoo Hehe on the central coast of British Columbia have been now engaged in salmon farming for more than 25 years. And when they started, they had 5% employment. Now they have 95% employment, is 50% of their economy. They operate their own processing plant. They take product from their partner salmon farm, they smoke it, and they actually sell it across Canada in Walmart under an Indigenous brand. So it has these incredible opportunities, not just for Indigenous employees, but for Indigenous communities. And we're very proud of that.
Isn't that Clem2 Spirit smoked salmon?
That is Clem2 Spirit smoked salmon.
Big fan, very tasty. Would recommend.
Very, very awesome.
What has the significance to you personally been of your work in salmon farming?
Well, I mean, coming from a construction background, it was almost seasonal, laid off a few months out of the year every year. This has really allowed my family to have consistent employment and take part in those extracurricular activities that the kids really enjoy. Hockey, which is expensive. It set me up to buy my first home in my hometown that I grew up in.
How old are the kids?
6, 8, and 17.
That's a lot of hockey expenses.
Yeah.